Good afternoon. This is the webinar for UWorld NCLEX. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk very briefly about the actual exam. The main point of this webinar is to showcase the UWorld question bank software. So like I said, we'll talk a little bit about the exam, some of the benefits of the UWorld question bank. Then we'll go through a few sample questions, show you how to set up a block of questions. Then we'll go back and talk about the features of the question bank, talk about some statistics, and then at the end we'll open up some of the questions you guys are asking. I've actually got Emily, who's one of our RNs, who is on our NCLEX review team here with me as well, and she's going to be assisting in answering some of the questions. So when we get to that point, make sure you have some of the questions that you have posted so that we can get through all of those. Okay, so what do you need to know about the NCLEX? Most of you probably already know a lot about the exam, so I'm not going to go into much detail. Some of this information is very basic. The point of this is just to make sure that you understand that this is different from pretty much any exam that you've probably ever taken, and it may be the most difficult exam that you will take in your life. That's why students stress about it so much. So some of this stuff is kind of common sense. We know the questions are difficult. They're designed for you to have a 50-50 chance of getting them correct. In adaptive practice tests, a lot of students always ask about if resources provide them with an adaptive practice test, but the benefit of that is actually an efficient way to assess you. The NCSBN is actually doing you somewhat of a favor by making this an adaptive exam because it allows you to only take the number of questions that you need to prove that you understand all of the material. So if you really know the content, everything that you need to know, you can be done in 75 questions. If you don't know it as well, it could take you a little bit longer. So a lot of board exams are set up to where you have to take a certain set number of questions no matter what. So no matter if you know the content really well or if you don't know really well, everyone takes the same amount of questions. And you probably already know that the test is going to cover what you should know in your first year of entry-level nursing. So it's not necessarily testing what you're learning in nursing school now. So the image that we have here was actually created by one of our in-house medical illustrators. We asked them to create this for us, basically to portray how most nursing students feel when they're preparing for this exam, and probably while you're going through all of your nursing school. You can see you have a student here who looks stressed out, is studying, has 20 or 30 different books and different resources that they're trying to use. And basically the message here is this an efficient way to study? Most likely no. Most students can't utilize that many different resources and come away with it what they need to. So we don't want you to do this. This is not how we think you should be preparing for any type of exam. So how can UWorld help? What is it that UWorld provides that will be beneficial to you? If you have seen our question bank, you have probably noticed that our questions are a little bit different from a lot of the questions that are available to you. They're very in-depth. Students have come back to us and said, this is more of an explanation bank. It's not a question bank. Basically, that's kind of what we designed the question bank to be, is a learning resource for you, not necessarily something to only assess you. It can be used as an assessment tool. You can definitely do that and see how you're scoring and get that confidence of whether you're ready for the exam or not. But that wasn't the original purpose for the question bank. It is designed to be a learning resource and to teach you concepts. If you understand the exam, you know that the exam is testing you at that very high application level, critical thinking and application. And that's how we've designed our questions, is to provide the material at that level, the same level as the NCLEX would consider a passing level or higher. And knowing you're prepared is going to greatly reduce your anxiety. So whenever you're doing really hard questions, You're going to know whenever you sit down for the exam, hey, I've been doing these really high level questions. They were super difficult. Students always say that these questions are as difficult or even harder than the ones they actually see on the exam. So you're going to be more confident, which is going to greatly reduce your anxiety. And one of the other things that I'll mention again and later in the presentation is that we're not just an app. A lot of students just see us and they say, hey, you're an NCLEX app. That's actually, we do have an app available, but our desktop interface is designed to look almost identical to the interface that you're going to see when actually sit down and take the NCLEX exam. So that again is going to reduce your anxiety. When you sit down to take the exam, you're just going to feel like you're doing UWorld questions in your home because you're already familiar with that. Okay, so I'm going to switch over so we can do some practice questions. Okay, here we go. So we have the screen here. This is going to be basically your dashboard whenever you log into your account. This is the create test page. If you're not familiar with this already, at the top you have test mode. So you have 4 different modes. You have tutor, untimed, timed, and timed tutor. The tutor modes are going to be the most beneficial because that's where you're going to get the super in-depth rationales that you can basically, that's how you're going to learn the most from these questions. Question mode, you can do all unused questions. So these are all the questions you haven't already used or done in a block. You can go back and do only the incorrect questions that you've done, any questions that you've marked, which I'll show you how to do that. Or you can do all, or you can even do custom exams. So if you have the IDs of certain questions that you've seen here, you can go back and do those as well. So then we go down to subject. You can do specific subjects. Or you can do select all. You can do select all on subject and systems. That way it's gonna just throw questions from every category at you, just like you were actually taking the NCLEX exam. Or you can get super specific. Like I say, we want to do all med-surg questions and cardiovascular systems. And you can do up to a maximum of 75 questions for each block. So let's go ahead and go through a few. So really quickly, before I select an answer, I'm going to show you some of the features so you can take notes. You can say, I need to come back and practice this question. That will save. Your calculator here, you can use that on any of the math questions. You can change the font size. If it's hard for you to read, you have 3 different font sizes here. Feedback. This option is if you notice something on the question that you have a question about, or you want to send us a note. You will not get a response from this from anyone. This is basically, you've noticed something with this question that you're not sure about, or maybe you discovered something in class that you think may be different from what this question is asking or saying. So you can send us a note. One of the RNs from our NCLEX review team will get that feedback. They'll go into this question and check it and make sure that everything's okay with the question. But again, you will not receive any response from this. So you can mark a question for review. Excuse me. Say you go through and do this question, you get it wrong, you're not sure why. You say, hey, I need to come back at a later time and really go back through this question. So we've got to select all that apply here. So I'm just going to pick some. You're going to pick your answers. You can mark out. Say, I know it's not 2 and 4, so I'm going to just mark those options out. Submit. So it'll tell you here, incorrect. The correct answer is 1 and 4. It'll say basically the difficulty level of this question. 73% of people answered this question correctly. So it's not one of the more difficult questions in the QBank. How long you spent on this question and when this question was last updated. So this question was updated back in the end of January. Now we get on to the rationale. So you have your explanation. That'll tell you why 1 and 4, why those are the correct answer. Then it'll go through all of the incorrect answers and basically tell you, okay, here's why these are not the correct answer. And then you have your educational objective here. So the idea behind providing all of this information to you in this one spot is to keep you from having to continuously refer back to other resources. We basically have designed this to be a one resource for you to use to teach you the concepts behind all of this that you're going to have to know so that you're not having to go, hey, I don't understand this. I only got a little 1-sentence explanation. Now I need to go find out in a textbook somewhere what the reasoning is behind this. So we're trying to keep it from having to do that. So let's go through one more. Again, let's say I don't think it's number 1 or number 2. I'm going to pick number 3. Hey, look, I got it right. So correct, 88% of people answered this correctly. This is one of the easier questions, last updated December. And again, it's going to give you the explanation, tell you why the other options are not correct, and then give you your educational objective for this question. Let's go do one more real quick. And again, and let's say, hey, I don't understand this. I'm going to mark this for review. So then at a later date, you go back in to create a test. You can go back and do a block of questions only for the ones that you've previously marked. So I'm going to end this test. Now let's say I want to go see how I've done. So this is going to give you the performance on the block of questions that you just completed. So you can see here, I got the first and third questions incorrect. The second one I got correct. And then I ended the test. So I paused it. I omitted these last questions. You can go back individually and view that question. Say, hey, I don't remember that. What was it that I got wrong? So you can also, if you've done previous blocks of questions, here you have an overall performance. So this will tell you how you've done overall of all the questions that you've answered. Total correct, incorrect, how many you've skipped or omitted. Tell you where the median score falls, where your score. And then it'll break it down by subject or system. So the tests I've done so far, I've only done med-surg and cardio. So that's why it's showing these two, but it'll break that down. So once you've done more questions, it'll obviously have all of those listed there. And then if you want to do previous tests. So I've done 2 previous tests so far. So I could go back and look at any of those tests if I wanted to. Okay, so let's switch back to the presentation real quick. Okay, so now that we did some questions, let's talk a little more about what you're going to get with UWorld. So these are basically the features. So right now we have a little over 1,850 questions. We continuously add questions. We had a student on one of our Facebook group actually comment, I think yesterday, saying, "Hey, why is there more questions today than there was yesterday?" Well, that's because we are going to continue to add questions until we have enough in there that we think it's enough for everyone to have the full benefit of. Over 30% of our questions are select all that apply or alternate format. When we were designing our question bank, that was one of the most common things we heard from students is they felt like there were not enough of these type of questions out there for them to adequately study and know how to answer these questions. So that's why we make it a point to make sure that we have at least 30% of our questions that are only that style. You're going to get vivid illustrations and images. We have our own team of certified medical illustrators that create images and charts and tables to go specifically along with our questions. And like I mentioned before, we do have an app, but you're basically, whenever you sign up for UWorld, you're basically getting access to a software that is NCLEX. It's an NCLEX question bank. You can access it on your desktop, mobile, tablet. And the desktop version, like I mentioned, and what you just saw is going to almost mirror what you are going to see on the actual NCLEX exam. So very convenient, very accessible. You could start a block of questions at home on your laptop or on your desktop. You need to leave, you can pause that, and you can pick that up later on a tablet or an iPhone. Okay, so does it work? So we get asked a lot, how successful are students, are they being with using UWorld? So we've had, since we launched just a little over a year ago, we've had over 60,000 nursing students use the question bank. A couple months ago, we sent out a survey because we want to find out how the students are doing when they're using our UWorld question bank to prepare. And these are some of the statistics we wanted to share with everyone. So one of the questions we asked was, out of all the resources you use, and most students use anywhere between 4 and 5 different resources when they are preparing. So out of all those resources, 92% of the students ranked UWorld as either the #1 or the #2 resource that best prepared them for the NCLEX. We thought that was a pretty strong statement. So out of all the ones they use, whether it's books or other reviews or other question banks, they pretty much all of them ranked us in the top 1 or 2. So some other information we wanted to share was, we also asked students, okay, how many questions overall did you complete out of the question bank, and what was your overall percentage score? So out of both of those, if they did a minimum of 1,250 questions, or if they were scoring at least 56% or higher overall in the question bank, they passed the exam at a 90% rate. And we feel like that goes to show what the level that we actually create our questions at, because students are just barely getting over half of our questions right, and they're still doing really well when they go to sit for the exam. And another question we wanted to find out, or another answer we wanted to find out from the students, was how our questions compare to the ones they're actually seeing on the exam. So we asked them, were the UWorld questions easier? Were they at the same level, or were they harder than what you saw on the NCLEX? And 86% rated them as at the same level difficulty, or even harder than what they actually experienced on the exam. Another good way to find out how beneficial UWorld is just to ask your peers, ask your students that are in the class ahead of you. We feel like for the students, that's probably going to be the most comfortable way to make a decision, because you're asking people that have been in your shoes before. These are quotes from students and that are part of our closed Facebook group, which is NCLEX UWorld. If you're not a part of that, obviously most of you are if you're in this webinar. But if you're not, make sure that you join that community. So these are actually the words from students that have posted on that page. You can see some of them are pretty emotional about what they say, and they're all very willing to share their success and how they prepared for this exam. And here's some actual screenshots from that same group that we just took out of there. And it's just more, there's so much of this every day. There's more and more students who are coming to the group and, saying, yay, I'm an RN. I finally did it. Here's what I did. And, I thank these people and these resources for helping me get through that. So, even if nothing else, that's a benefit of being part of that group, is it's such a large community of people that are willing to share what they've done to be successful. So we're going back to the study effectively. So this is a picture that a student actually posted in that Facebook group. You can see there's a guy here trying to peek over a wall, and he's standing on probably 20 or 30 different ladders, but they're all just laying on top of each other. So just like it says, it doesn't matter how many resources you have. If you don't know how to use them, it will never be enough. This guy could make one simple change. He could just use one of those ladders the right way, and then it would totally change the outcome of what he's trying to do. Same for you guys. Like I said, there's tons of resources out there. And going back to that picture, you have the student who's stressed out trying to use all these different resources. We don't want you doing that. You can use one resource very effectively, and it'll totally change how successful you are. So pricing. Students always ask about pricing. We are subscription based. So a lot of students get the false understanding that you pay monthly for this. That's kind of not how we do it. You can do that. You can just purchase 1 month at a time. Or you can purchase all the way up to 1 and even 2 years. So you see the pricing here. Obviously, the more you buy up front, the longer subscription, it's actually going to be a better deal for you. What's becoming more and more common is the 3 months. And most likely it's because we continue to add questions to the question bank, and students are seeing how difficult and in-depth they are, and they take a little bit longer to get through than most questions that are available to you. So students are realizing that, okay, I can't get through all, 18, almost 1900 now questions in 1 or 2 months. I need a little bit longer. I need to give myself a little bit longer to get through that. Okay, so questions. Let's see what questions we can answer. And like I said, I have Emily here with me, and she's one of our RNs, and she's going to go through and help us answer. So let's start with the top one. Will UWorld have updates according to the new test plan as far as organ donation, as well as any other new information added to the NCLEX-RN? I'm going to let Emily answer this one.
So the new NCLEX-RN test plan went into effect April 1st, so just a couple weeks ago, and we are already current as far as including questions about organ donation, client needs for culture and spirituality, as well as some other weight changes. We're also working to make it closer and closer every day to the test plan.
Okay, so next question. How many weeks before test date do you recommend at least to start studying UWorld? This is kind of hard to say on an individual basis. Every student's different. Every student has longer or needs longer. We kind of recommend what the students are kind of trending to, and that would be a minimum of 3 months. And again, it's because we are consistently adding more and more questions. So in order to get through all those questions, and we really recommend you do try to get through all of them. Obviously, the more of those questions that you do, it's going to be a benefit to you. And as we add more and more questions, our ultimate goal is to get to 2,500 or 3,000 questions. So it will be almost impossible to get through that many questions in that short of a time, and do it the right way and do it effectively for you to actually take away what you need to for that. Okay, so what is a good percentage range to be within as I study for boards using UWorld? So I think we kind of covered that in those one statistics. From what we've seen from the survey, as long as you're scoring at least 56% or higher, then it's showing that the students are passing at a 90% rate. So that should be a pretty good goal for you to shoot for. We typically like to bump that up a little bit and say, hey, if you're doing 60%, then you should be really confident that you're ready to go and go sit for the exam. Audio just went out. Yeah, we had to turn it off there for a second when we were switching screens. Do you have UWorld for practical nursing students? We do have a PN question bank. Just go to the website, www.uworld.com, and there's two options. There's one for RN, one for PN. Did it start already? Yes, it did. Is there a way that there could be a Canadian rate to purchase UWorld? Our pricing listed is in US dollars. Pretty much typically anytime you buy it, it will be converted to, say you purchase it on a credit card, that's going to be converted to Canadian dollars when you purchase it. That's not something that's done on our end. Okay, so what study tips could you give those who are repeat test takers? Would UWorld consider making some sort of study plan to utilize UWorld in the most efficient way? Either general study guide or a study guide according to length. Again, with 60 to 100,000 students, it's kind of difficult to make even a generalized study plan because everyone's going to have a different length of time they're studying. And especially with having so many questions, with us constantly adding questions, it's going to be kind of hard to difficult to do that. Especially if you're using, we have no way of knowing what all resources you're using. If we were to do one in the future, it would pretty much only be for UWorld, and how you implemented that with whatever you were using would be totally up to you. Okay, I think we may have covered most of the questions. Looks like a lot of them were about the sound. Let me make sure before we sign off. Okay, so we have the question here. Once we renew the question bank, is there any possible way to start from the beginning as a new one? The reason why I asked my friends whoever renewed their subscription, they said it starts from where you, let's see, from where we stopped last time. If you renew before it expires, it's basically going to be a continuation from what you were doing. If you purchase a 6-month or longer subscription, then you have a reset. So whenever you get through all the questions and you say, okay, I want to basically start from over, you just email us and say, hey, I want to use my reset. Then we basically clear it, and it'll be like you're starting a new subscription. After payment for the QBank, when does the subscription start? It starts when you activate it. So when you go in and launch, that's when you're going to actually start your countdown to when your subscription expires. How can I join? You basically just go to our website, uworld.com, go to the nursing section, you select whether you want RN or PN, and you decide which subscription length you want then, and that's how you get started. So we have a question. If I purchase the 1-month subscription from UWorld, but realize that it is not enough time to complete all the question, is there an extension fee, or do I have to purchase a whole another month? You can renew. So you basically can renew. Say you want to renew for another month, you have that option, and it's going to be a little less expensive than if you were to purchase, a brand new subscription. So yes, that's basically what that is an extension. Are the UWorld questions updated to fit the changes? Yes, we just kind of covered that a few minutes ago, but yes, anytime there's going to be an update, they actually send that information out ahead of time before they actually make the change. So we do have time ahead of time to make whatever changes that they're going to be implementing, so that by the time that change, for say example this year, April 1st, we've already made the changes in our question bank to address that. Okay, I think I got through most of the questions. If you guys have additional questions, you can always send that to us. You can post them in the group. A lot of the times your fellow students can answer them for you. If not, we can always chime in and answer that. Well, thank you for attending the webinar. We're going to try to start doing more and more of these. And we invite you to, if you would like, if you think it would be beneficial for us to do a webinar specifically for your school, just send us an email and send it to media@uworld.com, and just kind of tell us, some information, what school you're from, when would be some good dates to do that, and we can get that set up. We're also always looking for campus advocates, which is basically students who are kind of like a rep for UWorld at their school, and kind of share information about UWorld, pass it on to students, set up webinars, stuff like that. And you can send, if you're interested in something like that, we can set that up. Just send an email to the same email address. It's media@uworld.com, and we'd be more than happy to have you guys do that for us. So thanks again for joining. We appreciate it. We hope it was beneficial. And if you guys have any other questions, please send them our way. Thanks.